NEC Article 210.8 covers additional requirements for commercially and institutionally occupied spaces. Specifically, 210.8b addresses ground fault circuit interrupter protection for personnel. This section mandates ground fault circuit interrupters, often called GFCIs, on feeders or subfeeders that supply 125-volt single-phase, 15 and 20 ampere receptacle outlets. This requirement applies to occupancies that are required to be served by systems outlined in 210.11 or 210.12, where the outlets are used to power cord and plug connected equipment. The ice cream parlor within the elderly care living facility falls under the definition of a commercially and institutionally occupied space. Because of this, the stipulations within NEC 210.8, including the need for GFCI protection, become relevant for 125-volt single-phase 15 and 20 ampere receptacle outlets that provide power to cord and plug connected equipment. Given the presence of equipment such as coolers, freezers, ice cream machines, and countertop appliances all utilizing cord and plug connections, GFCI protection is required on the feeders or subfeeders supplying these outlets. To break down the requirements of 210.8b concerning ground fault circuit interrupter protection for personnel, it's important to understand its core components. Firstly, the protection applies to feeders. A feeder is defined as all circuit conductors between the service equipment, the source of a separately derived system, or other power supply source, and the final branch circuit over current device. This means that the GFCI protection needs to be installed at a point that protects the entire run of receptacles. Secondly, the protection also applies to subfeeders. A subfeeder is a set of conductors that branch off from a feeder to supply power to a specific area or piece of equipment. So, the ground fault protection must be installed to protect those circuits as well. Thirdly, the voltage, phase, and amperage of the receptacle outlets matter. The requirement specifically calls out 125-volt, single-phase, 15 and 20 ampere receptacle outlets. This means that other voltages and amperages are exempt from these rules, along with three-phase configurations. Fourthly, the type of occupancy is important. The rule applies to occupancies required to be served by systems as provided in 210.11 or 210.12. These articles deal with branch circuit requirements and the number of branch circuits required. Fifthly, the equipment must be cord and plug connected. The GFCI protection is specifically for outlets supplying cord and plug connected equipment. If the equipment is hardwired, it is not included in this requirement. In summation, given the conditions described, the ice cream parlor would indeed be subject to the requirements outlined in NEC 210.8b. This necessitates GFCI protection for 125-volt, single-phase, 15 and 20 ampere receptacle outlets that are used to supply cord and plug connected equipment within the space. Consider a scenario involving the installation of a new ice cream machine in the facility. The machine requires a 120-volt, 15 amp dedicated circuit. The electrician would need to ensure that the circuit supplying the receptacle for the ice cream machine is GFCI protected. This could involve installing a GFCI circuit breaker in the panel or a GFCI receptacle as the first outlet on the circuit. Similarly, imagine a situation where several countertop appliances, such as blenders and mixers, are used in the ice cream parlor. These appliances are plugged into standard 120-volt, 20 amp receptacles. The electrician must ensure that all these receptacles are GFCI protected, either by using GFCI receptacles or a GFCI circuit breaker protecting the entire circuit. Another point to keep in mind is that the NEC does not specify the type of GFCI protection to be used. It can be either a GFCI circuit breaker or a GFCI receptacle. The choice depends on the specific installation and the electrician's preference. A GFCI circuit breaker provides protection for the entire circuit, while a GFCI receptacle only protects that specific outlet and any downstream outlets on the same circuit. The selection of a GFCI device may also depend on the existing electrical infrastructure. In some cases, it may be easier to install GFCI receptacles, while in others, it may be more practical to use a GFCI circuit breaker. In existing installations, it is possible to use a feed-through GFCI receptacle to protect other standard receptacles downstream. Proper wiring is essential to achieve this outcome. In this arrangement, the downstream outlets will not have ground fault protection if the wiring is done incorrectly. When installing GFCI protection, it is crucial to follow the manufacturer's instructions and all applicable electrical codes. The GFCI devices must be properly grounded to function correctly. Improper installation can render the GFCI protection ineffective, increasing the risk of electrical shock. To ensure compliance with NEC 210.8b, it is recommended to consult with a qualified electrician. The electrician can assess the specific electrical needs of the ice cream parlor and determine the most appropriate GFCI PROTECTION Chinese letter ligature. Additionally, regular testing of the GFCI devices is essential to ensure that they are functioning correctly. The manufacturer's instructions typically provide guidance on how to test the GFCI protection. In conclusion, NEC 210.8b requires GFCI protection for 125-volt single-phase, 15 and 20 ampere receptacle outlets in commercial and institutional kitchens, including ice cream parlors and elderly care facilities where these outlets supply cord and plug-connected equipment. Compliance with this requirement is essential to ensure the safety of personnel and to prevent electrical shocks. Remember that it is critical to consult with a qualified electrician to ensure proper installation and compliance with local electrical codes. Firstly, identify all 125-volt single-phase, 15 and 20 ampere receptacle outlets that will be used to supply cord and plug-connected equipment. Secondly, determine whether a GFCI circuit breaker or GFCI receptacles will be used to provide the required protection. Thirdly, install the GFCI protection according to the manufacturer's instructions and all applicable electrical codes. Fourthly, test the GFCI protection to ensure that it is functioning correctly. Fifthly, consult with a qualified electrician to ensure compliance with NEC 210.8b and all local electrical codes. Lastly, schedule regular testing of all GFCI devices to ensure their continued effectiveness. The installation of GFCI protection in commercial and institutional kitchens, such as the ice cream parlor in the elderly care facility, is paramount to maintaining a safe environment for both staff and residents. GFCIs, or ground fault circuit interrupters, are designed to protect individuals from electrical shock by monitoring the flow of current within a circuit. When a ground fault occurs, meaning that electricity is escaping the intended path and potentially flowing through a person to ground, the GFCI quickly interrupts the circuit, cutting off the power and minimizing the risk of injury or fatality. Specifically, NEC 210.8b mandates the use of GFCI protection in commercial and institutional occupancies for 125-volt single-phase, 15 and 20 ampere receptacle outlets. This is because these outlets are commonly used to power portable appliances and equipment that may be used in wet or damp locations, increasing the likelihood of electrical shock. The ice cream parlor in the elderly care facility clearly falls under the scope of NEC 210.8b, given that it is a commercial kitchen environment where cord and plug-connected equipment such as coolers, freezers, ice cream machines, and countertop appliances are utilized. Therefore, to ensure compliance with the electrical safety standards and to protect the well-being of individuals using the space, GFCI protection must be implemented for all applicable receptacle outlets. There are two primary methods of providing GFCI protection: GFCI circuit breakers and GFCI receptacles. GFCI circuit breakers are installed in the electrical panel and provide protection for the entire branch circuit, while GFCI receptacles are installed at the outlet itself and provide protection only for the specific outlet and any downstream outlets on the same circuit. When selecting between these two options, factors such as cost, ease of installation, and the desired level of protection should be considered. In some cases, using a GFCI circuit breaker may be more practical if the entire branch circuit needs to be protected. In other cases, using GFCI receptacles may be more cost-effective if only specific outlets require protection. Regardless of the chosen method, It is crucial to ensure that the GFCI devices are properly installed and tested to verify their functionality. This involves following the manufacturer's instructions carefully and verifying that the GFCI trips when tested using a GFCI tester. Regular testing of GFCI devices is essential to ensure that they are functioning properly and providing the intended level of protection. It is recommended to test GFCIs at least once a month or according to the manufacturer's instructions. To summarize, the requirements of NEC 210.8b are applicable to the ice cream parlor and the elderly care facility, necessitating the installation of GFCI protection for all 125-volt, single-phase, 15 and 20 ampere receptacle outlets that supply cord and plug-connected equipment. Compliance with these requirements is essential to ensure the safety of individuals using the space and to prevent electrical shocks. It is recommended to consult with a qualified electrician to ensure proper installation and compliance with local electrical codes. Consider the practical implications of this requirement. Imagine a staff member using a portable ice cream mixer that has a frayed cord. Without GFCI protection, if the frayed cord were to come into contact with a metal part of the mixer, creating a ground fault, the staff member could receive a severe electrical shock. However, with GFCI protection in place, the GFCI would detect the ground fault and quickly trip the circuit, cutting off the power and preventing the electrical shock. Another scenario to consider is the use of a pressure washer to clean the floors in the ice cream parlor. If the pressure washer were to develop a leak, causing water to come into contact with electrical components, a ground fault could occur. Again, without GFCI protection, individuals in the vicinity could be at risk of electrical shock. However, with GFCI protection, the GFCI would detect the ground fault and trip the circuit, mitigating the risk of injury. In addition to protecting individuals from electrical shock, GFCI protection can also help to prevent equipment damage. When a ground fault occurs, the flow of current through unintended paths can cause overheating and damage to electrical equipment. By quickly interrupting the circuit, GFCIs can minimize the risk of equipment damage and prevent costly repairs. To further illustrate the importance of GFCI protection, consider the following statistics. According to the Electrical Safety Foundation International, ground faults are a leading cause of electrical injuries and fatalities in the workplace. In fact, ground faults account for over 50% of all electrical fatalities in the United States each year. These statistics highlight the critical need for GFCI protection in commercial and institutional environments, such as the ice cream parlor and the elderly care facility. By implementing GFCI protection, the facility can significantly reduce the risk of electrical injuries and fatalities and create a safer environment for staff and residents. Remember that electrical codes and standards are constantly evolving to address emerging safety concerns. It is important to stay up to date with the latest requirements and to consult with qualified professionals to ensure compliance. The information provided in this overview is intended for general guidance only and should not be considered a substitute for professional advice. In conclusion, NEC 210.8b requires GFCI protection for 125-volt, single-phase, 13 and 20 ampere receptacle outlets in commercial and institutional kitchens, including ice cream parlors and elderly care facilities, where these outlets supply cord and plug-connected equipment. Compliance with this requirement is essential to ensure the safety of personnel and to prevent electrical shocks. Consultation with a qualified electrician is crucial to ensure proper installation and compliance with local electrical codes.